I want to begin tonight with a couple of origin stories. Not quite the origin stories of superheroes, but close, as you'll see. These are stories from the field of geology. Is there any geologists in the room tonight? Ah, okay. Our friend Alex. Now, the first story is about the origin of this famous geological formation, the Devil's Tower, on the eastern plains of Wyoming. And the story goes something like this. Long, long ago, two young First Nations boys out on a hunting expedition found themselves lost on a great prairie. They had been playing together one afternoon and had wandered far out of the village, far out into the sagebrush. They came to a hill, and on the other side they saw a herd of antelope, and of course, they wanted to hunt them. So they followed the herd for a while. Now, eventually they got hungry and decided it was time to go home. But after following the wandering antelope so far from home, the two boys realized that they didn't know where they were. They started back in the direction where they thought their village was, but in reality, they only got farther and farther away from it. As darkness fell, the boys were exhausted, and they curled up beneath a tree and went to sleep. They got up the next morning, and they walked even further, still traveling the wrong way. For 3 days, the boys wandered, desperate to get home. How they wished that their parents or elder brothers or sisters or fellow tribe members would find them as they walked on what is now the plains of Wyoming. But nobody did find them. And on the 4th day of their ordeal, the boys suddenly had a feeling that they were being followed. They looked around, and in the distance, they saw Mato, the bear. Now, this was no ordinary bear, but a giant bear, so huge that the boys would only be a small mouthful for him. The bear was so huge that the earth trembled with each step as he took when he pursued the boys. The boys started running, looking for a place to hide, but the giant bear was much faster than they. They stumbled, and the bear was almost upon them. They could see his wide-open jaws full of enormous teeth. They could smell his hot breath. The boys were old enough to have learned to pray, so they called upon Wakantanka, the creator. Tonkashila, grandfather, have pity. Save us, they cried. Suddenly, the earth shook and began to rise underneath, and the boys rose with it. Out of the earth came a huge cone of rock, going up until it rose more than 1,000 feet high, with the boys on top of it. Mato, the giant bear, was disappointed to see his meal disappearing into the clouds. Now, this bear was so huge that when he stood on his hind legs, he could almost reach to the top of the rock. Almost, but not quite. With claws that were as large as teepee poles, Mato dug into the side of the rock, trying to get up, trying to reach for the boys. As he did so, he gouged at the towering rock, creating huge scratches on the side of the rock. He tried every spot, every side, all around the rock, but it was no use. The boys waited in fear until Mato finally wore himself out and gave up. Now, relieved, the boys watched as the giant bear lumbered away, a huge, growling, grunting mountain of an animal gradually disappearing over the horizon. And that's how the Devil's Tower came into being.